Welcome to episode 12 of the Essential GovCon Brief, the podcast dedicated to delivering timely analysis and insights for government contractors navigating today's complex regulatory environment. I'm your host, Patrick Burns, and joined by my co-host, Quyen.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, we've got a lot to unpack this episode, starting with the SBA's deep dive into the 8A Business Development Program after some major fraud findings.
After that, we'll break down a notable Government Accountability Office decision addressing organizational conflicts of interest and cybersecurity, highlighting important lessons for contractors on managing OCI risks effectively.
Yep. And finally, we'll break down a federal court case involving AmeriCorps that's raising some real questions about funding cuts and procedural fairness.
All right, there's much to discuss, so let's dive into the first topic.
Yep. We're talking about SBA audits. So we're kicking things off with some big news from the SBA about its 8A Business Development Program. Just as a refresher, the 8A program is a 9-year initiative that helps disadvantaged small businesses compete in the federal space. So it offers counseling, training, and other resources to help them grow.
That's right. So Administrator Kelly Loeffler has ordered a comprehensive audit of the SBA's 8A Business Development Program in response to a significant Department of Justice investigation. So the DOJ investigation uncovered a longstanding fraud and bribery scheme involving over $550 million in federal contracts that were improperly awarded through the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID.
Administrative Loeffler made it clear that the agency wants to root out fraud and hold folks accountable.
Exactly. The SBA's Office of General Contracting and Business Development will lead the audit, examining high dollar and limited competition contracts awarded over the past 15 years. Any findings of wrongdoing will be referred to the SBA Office of Inspector General and the Department of Justice for further enforcement actions. So the announcement was devoid of any specifics as to what contracts qualify as high dollar and also limited competition, presumably sole source awards, but not specifically stated.
Yeah, but again, just a heads up, this audit announcement doesn't change any of the existing rules around record retention. Contractors are still generally only required to keep records for 3 years after final payment.
A good point, Quyen. So additionally, conducting an audit of every individual 8A concern or to sole source or quote unquote high dollar contract in the past 15 years will prove certainly challenging, if not impossible, due to record retention requirements. And consequently, the true extent of fraud or abuse uncovered by this investigation may remain uncertain due to those issues.
Yeah, and another thing to keep in mind, this administration has really ramped up oversight of the 8A program. The Biden administration increased the target for contracts awarded to small disadvantaged businesses to 15% in fiscal year 2025, but the Trump administration has lowered that goal down to the statutory floor of 5%. And has required all 8A businesses to requalify for the program. So definitely a trend towards more scrutiny.
Contractors should closely monitor developments surrounding this investigation while remaining mindful of their record retention obligations under their prior and existing contract.
So let's move on to the GAO decision we spoke about earlier. This one's especially relevant for contractors dealing with IT and cybersecurity contracts.
That's exactly right. We're talking about a recent GAO decision, the protest by DirectViz Solutions against the Department of Army's award of an IT support services task order to Peraton Incorporated. The GAO sustained DirectViz's protest, finding the Army's evaluation of an organizational conflict of interest, OCI, was unreasonable.
Yeah, and just before we dive into the case a little more, just a quick refresher on what OCI is. So it's basically a situation where a contractor has overlapping roles or competing interests that might affect its ability to stay objective, play fair, or keep sensitive info secure.
Exactly. So there are 3 categories of OCIs: bias ground rules, unequal access to information, and impaired objectivity. So in this specific case, the GAO identified an impaired objectivity OCI.
Yeah, and what impaired objectivity OCI is when a contractor's work under one contract might influence how it performs under another. So here, DirectViz argued, and the GAO agreed, that Peraton's existing task order supporting Army Cyber Command significantly overlapped with responsibilities under the new award for Army's Global Cyber Center.
So why that matters, the GAO found that the Army did not properly consider that Peraton, performing strategic cybersecurity tasks for Army Cyber Command, could be in a position to influence policies and assessments that directly impacted its responsibilities at the Global Cyber Center.
Exactly. The GAO found that the Army didn't really dig that deep into the overlap, The Army just accepted broad statements from the awardee that everything was fine without doing any further analysis.
Right. So the GAO specifically criticized the Army's OCI review because it relied too heavily on conclusory statements and general assurances rather than a detailed independent assessment of the overlapping duties outlined in each task order. So the GAO stressed that agencies must independently verify whether tasks performed under different contracts could create incentives or opportunities for biased performance.
Yeah, and this is just a strong reminder that agencies shouldn't, and after this decision, likely won't take a contractor's word for it. They need to look closely at the actual scopes of work and figure out whether there's a real risk to objectivity.
Right. So consequently, the GAO recommended the Army meaningfully reconsider the OCI issue involving Peraton, either implementing effective mitigation strategies or potentially reevaluating the award altogether. For contractors, the decision serves certainly as a strong reminder that proactively identifying and transparently disclosing potential OCIs early on is essential in the procurement process.
Yeah, and for contractors, this includes having a clear plan for spotting and mitigating conflicts.
Contractors should also consider engaging legal counsel early on in the event of an OCI issue to ensure they're fully compliant and prepared for any potential scrutiny during bid evaluations.
Yep, that's an excellent point. So let's move on to the final topic for today, the AmeriCorps grant funding. So we're looking here at a major decision involving AmeriCorps and the sudden cancellation of grant funding.
In the recent case, Maryland versus Corporation for National and Community Service, 24 states and the District of Columbia sued AmeriCorps after the agency abruptly terminated funding for more than 1,000 grant-funded programs. The mass termination impacted roughly 30,000 volunteers nationwide, effectively shutting down essential services overnight.
Yeah, and what's key here is that AmeriCorps made this decision without going through the notice and comment rulemaking, which is a required step under the Administrative Procedure Act. This process gives the public and, by extension, contractors a chance to weigh in before big policy changes happen.
Exactly. Notice and comment rulemaking is a key procedure under the Administrative Procedures Act, otherwise referred to as the APA. It requires federal agencies to publish proposed rules or major policy changes in the Federal Register, allowing the public, which obviously includes contractors, to review the proposals and submit comments. Agencies must then consider these comments before finalizing any decisions. The transparency serves to help prevent any kind of arbitrary actions and allows any effective parties by the rulemaking to advocate for their interests.
If you're a contractor relying on federal grants, an unexpected funding cut like this can completely derail your operations and finances.
Precisely. So AmeriCorps justified these sweeping cuts by citing Executive Order 14222, intended to implement the President's Department of Government Efficiency, Cost Efficiency Initiative, otherwise referred to as DOGE. This order directed agencies to review and potentially terminate or modify contracts and grants to reduce overall federal spending. Almost probably everyone listening to this knows very well. However, AmeriCorps executed these changes without following any proper procedural safeguards.
Yeah, the fact that Congress had already approved this funding for 2024 and 2025 raised even more red flags. This is precisely why the court questioned whether AmeriCorps oversteps its authority by canceling programs Congress had already paid for.
Exactly. AmeriCorps sent termination letters to award recipients, explicitly stating that the grants were terminated immediately because they no longer aligned with agency priorities. These letters not only ceased funding, but required immediate cessation of all grant-related activities and exited AmeriCorps volunteers from ongoing projects.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, this abrupt halt severely disrupted contract operations, which just underscores the importance of procedural compliance. And here the court agreed and issued an injunction to stop the terminations until proper procedures were followed.
For government contractors, this emphasizes the critical need to understand your procedural rights and executive directives closely. Contractors must remain vigilant and ready to engage proactively in the rulemaking process to protect their interests and investments.
Yeah, so bottom line, if you're in the federal grant space, just make sure you're keeping an eye out for changes in policy, watching for updates in the Federal Register, and speaking up during the comment process. And of course, having legal support can also help you stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly. So that wraps up episode 12 of the Essential GovCon brief from SBA audits, cybersecurity related conflicts of interest, and the procedural pitfalls of grant terminations. Each topic this month certainly carries important implications for contractors navigating the federal landscape.
The updates we discussed really drive home how important it is for contractors to stay alert and engaged, whether it's responding to new oversight, navigating potential conflicts, or just protecting your funding streams.
As always, thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and follow along for future updates. And if you found today's episode helpful, consider sharing it with your colleagues.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back soon with more updates. This has been the Essential GovCon Brief.